One of the great things about fall is making jack-o'-lanterns, and always, what do you do with the seeds? Can you eat those seeds? And yes, in fact, you can. However, in actuality, the seeds of the jack-o'-lantern pumpkin are not as tasty as the ones of the pie pumpkin, which makes sense because the pie pumpkin flesh is also tastier. So we're going to look at how to do it. I'm going to use a pie pumpkin, but you can also use the seeds out of your jack-o'-lantern if you choose to. What I wanted to show you first of all was the factor of removing the seeds from the flesh itself. Now, a lot of times people will scoop out all the insides and then try to separate the seeds, but it's actually easier if you just try to pull them away before you do that scooping, simply because they're still attached and it gives you something to pull against. So just tug them away. If you actually get a little bit of that orange pumpkin left on there, that's okay. You can either rinse it off, and some people think that it actually makes the pumpkin seeds taste better later on. So I've got most of what I need all ready to go, but we'll rinse these few here, and we just want to rinse them well. One of the other things that I didn't mention that I need you to try and remember to do is that when you're cutting open the pumpkin this way to remove the seeds, if you're planning to eat the seeds, it's a really good idea if you wash the outside of that pumpkin well, just like you would any other food that you were going to choose to eat, so that you make sure that if there's any contamination on the outside, it's not moving onto the seeds. There will be additional cooking there, but there's no reason to run the risk that you're going to move any of that contamination into the food that might in fact later on not get taken care of. So let's start our cooking process. You can put these seeds directly into the oven and toast them from there. I'm going to use a little bit different process. I'm going to actually boil the seeds a bit first, and part of that is because I want to move the salt that I'm going to put in the water into the seed itself, or into the kernel, not just on the outside and coated. So I'm using 2 cups of water per cup of seeds, and I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of salt. Most of the time when I give recipes for Oklahoma gardening, I include nutrition information. This time I'm not going to do so because I really don't have a good way to determine whether or not that salt, how much of it's going to move into the seeds. So you can either use no salt, you can use salt here, or it's up to you. You can adjust the salt to meet your own personal taste and nutrition needs. So I'm going to bring this to a boil. You notice we still have a little bit of orange on here. Again, that's fine. It will add a little bit to the taste. If you're going to toast them raw, you may want to reduce or limit the amount of that because it may scorch if you use a longer baking time. Bring this up to a boil and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. Alternatively, you could soak them in strong concentration of salt water and just put them in the refrigerator and let them soak overnight and drain them then. You'll notice also that I didn't drain them before I added them because I've added them to water, and I'm going to have to drain them and blot them dry really well before I put them in the oven, but at this point I didn't need to. Simmer it 10 minutes and we'll be ready to move on. After that 10 minutes of boil, we've had time for the seeds to hydrate, and that's the reason that we do this. You can bake the seeds and toast the seeds or roast the seeds without this step, but you get a softer, plumper seed kernel if you actually go through this next one. Now we want to make sure that we drain these well, and actually make sure that you dry them in addition to just draining them off. So shake off as much of the water as you can and then spread them out on paper towels and blot them dry, because we are not going to be drying the seeds in the oven, but we don't want any extra water interfering with the oil that we're going to put on them in addition to. So blot them fairly dry in just several layers of paper towel. They cool really quickly, so it's not a hazard to touch them really. And put them in our bowl here. And they will stick to the paper toweling, as you can see. So knock off as many as you actually want to keep, which in my case would be most of them or all of them, although I'm not going to shake them all loose for our event here. I've got a tablespoon of vegetable oil, and then you can season them however you want. Some people want them seasoned so that they are sweet. Some people want them so that they're savory. I'm going with the savory today. In fact, I'm adding some Old Bay seasoning, which is one option. You could use seasoning salt. You could use a mixture of herbs and spices. I'm not going to add any more salt to them at this point, however, because we cook them in heavily salted water. And the Old Bay seasoning also has some additional salt in addition to all the other flavors that it's got mixed in with it. Next step is to spread them out on a cookie sheet with sides or a pie plate with sides. You want to make something, some kind of a choice so that they aren't going to be falling off, because they are going to be taken in and out of the oven. I've got the oven preheated to 350 degrees. And again, you may have a recipe. I found more recipes for pumpkin seeds and ways to roast them than I could shake a stick at. And so I chose this one, tried a couple of others, and decided this was the one that I liked the best. I've got the oven preheating at 300 degrees, excuse me. I'm going to put the pumpkin seeds in for about 30 minutes. I found them anywhere from 400 degrees to 300 degrees, so whatever you've got will probably be fine. The thing that you want to do is, after about 10 minutes, start checking them and stirring them, so that sometimes the part that's laying against the cookie sheet will start to get a little bit too brown. So rotate them around a little bit, and probably do that every 5 to 10 minutes, closer to 5 minutes as the cooking proceeds. So this is all there is to it. If you don't have pumpkins and you want something like this and it's Thanksgiving and not Halloween, easy enough to use. You can use either butternut squash seeds, you can use acorn squash seeds, and probably any kind of a winter squash seed is going to work. Again, these are going in the oven at 300 for probably about a half an hour. You're going to have to watch them and determine when they get crisp enough for you, and you end up with something that looks like this. Again, a great snack, nutritious snack, high in fiber. You can eat the entire kernel. You don't have to break out the kernel itself. You can eat the seed coating as well, which increases the fiber content quite a bit. These are toasted pumpkin seeds for Oklahoma Gardening. I'm Barbara Brown.